How's it going, everybody? My name is Warner Fields with Fields of Profit. Today, I'm here with my friend Corey, who is a wholesale seller doing over $4 million a year on Amazon. We're going to be getting into how to get your first account, how he's been able to scale his business and do it all remotely. Really appreciate you hopping on the channel, Corey. If you just want to kind of briefly introduce yourself, maybe let them know how you got into Amazon. We can just kind of roll from there.
Yeah. So first of all, Warner, thanks so much for having me, man. And as far as my background is concerned, so I actually got started in Amazon back in 2017. And so I started the way a lot of people start, which is with used books. So for the longest time, I was going to thrift stores. I was buying used books for 50 cents or $1, and I was turning around and flipping them on Amazon for 15, 20, 50, sometimes even $100. Some of these used books can be pretty expensive. And over the course of the next year and a half to 2 years, I transitioned slowly into online arbitrage, which I did for about a year and a half. And then in January of 2019, that's when I found wholesale. And I see wholesale as a much more scalable model, one that has a lot more long-term potential than, say, an online arbitrage or retail arbitrage. Not that there's anything wrong with those models. I just saw it as more long-term. And so we've been 100% wholesale since January of 2019.
That's awesome. Yeah. And just for the uninitiated, can you explain in 15 seconds what Amazon wholesale is?
Yeah, definitely. So the wholesale business model for selling on Amazon involves buying brand name products directly from the manufacturer themselves, or sometimes from an authorized distributor or another reseller of some sort, and then turning around and selling those products on Amazon for a profit. So you're just buying at wholesale and selling at retail, essentially.
Yeah, pretty simple concept. Just might not be familiar with all the jargon and that kind of stuff. Yeah, so jumping into, the wholesale world, a lot of people watching my channel are doing online arbitrage. When should a seller think about doing online arbitrage, or when should they, start doing wholesale?
Yeah, so I think online arbitrage is a fantastic business model, and I think it definitely lends itself better to newer sellers or people that are just trying to get their feet wet in e-commerce and in Amazon specifically. For online arbitrage sellers that are looking to make the transition to wholesale, I think online arbitrage is a great foundation. So I always recommend people start there. Or if you live in a bigger town, retail arbitrage could be a good option as well. And utilizing one of those two business models for really, I don't have a set time period for how long I recommend people do online arbitrage or retail arbitrage before transitioning into wholesale. I recommend people do it long enough to where you master the shipping process, the sourcing process, you know how to read Keepa, you know how to buy profitable products. And then when you get into wholesale, it's just doing that on a larger scale. So really mastering the fundamentals and then making that transition is usually what I recommend people do.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. To me, I think it makes a lot of sense to start thinking about at least, taking that low hanging fruit once you're doing like 50, 100K in OA. It's way easier to scale to that. And then wholesale is how you can get the $250,000, $500,000 months, put up those serious numbers you see all over the place. Yeah. Just kind of jumping into, maybe finding the first distributor. That's what a lot of people are going to be wondering is, maybe I sent out a few emails or I called a couple brands and they just a bunch of hard no's. How were you able to go out and find your first distributor?
Yeah, so our first distributor actually came from, we just were looking at some of the brands that we were selling already. So brands that we'd either carried in our online arbitrage business or brands that where we were buying directly from the manufacturer. And maybe we wanted to get access to some other brands in that same category. So we reached out to that manufacturer and said, hey, do you have an authorized distributor that services our area, which at the time is in North Carolina? They connected us with an authorized distributor that services North Carolina. And not only did that distributor carry the brand that we had already been working with, but that distributor also carried about 200 to 300 other brands in that same category and in that same niche. So we were able to start buying, other brands' products from that same supplier. So it allows you to kill multiple birds with one stone, having access to a bunch of brands at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. There's even like those giant brands that you're not going to get an account with, Unilever or something like that.
Or like a Procter and Gamble.
Yeah, they might be able to give you 3, 4 other distributors, and that's how we've landed a couple of our distributors recently. Is just, who can I sell? Who can I buy from? Maybe I don't give you $1 million for a truckload, but who else can I buy from?
And just a quick note about that. So taking that approach, I think, is very beneficial and can kind of give you some leverage with some bigger distributors that might not listen to you otherwise. Because if you reach out to the manufacturer first, and let's just say in the case of like a Unilever, manufacturer says, oh, well, to buy directly from us, you got to buy a truckload a week, which I'm pretty sure is like P&G or Unilever. That's like one of their requirements. So that's obviously not going to work, especially not for a newer seller. So when you ask for that recommendation to a distributor that services your area, best case scenario, the manufacturer will reach out to the distributor for you and either like CC you on an email or give them a heads up that you're going to be reaching out. So that way, when you have a warm introduction directly from the manufacturer themselves, distributor is going to take you so much more seriously. And it's going to be way easier to land that account as opposed to just reaching out cold and doing it any other way.
Yeah, that's awesome. We've been doing the same thing with a big company. We just say, we talked to somebody who denied us. And then every time you talk to somebody underneath, it says, hey, we talked to, Joe over at XYZ.
Yeah.
Company. then it's like
Yep.
instantly like, oh, he knows what he's talking about. Yeah, that's awesome. So when you say like reach out to these distributors, there's a ton of different ways to reach out. Like, what does your outreach process look like?
Yep. So our outreach process, we always start with an email. We always lead with an email. And now I'm a firm believer that getting on the phone and talking to these people one on one is going to be more effective. However, email is going to be more scalable. And in our experience of personally having talked to literally over 2,000 suppliers in the last 4 years, when I call these suppliers for our first touch, like we've never had any interaction and I call them up, I'd say 7 times out of 10, they're going to just tell me to email them anyways. Because when I call them up, I'm asking for an application to buy from them at Wholesale. And like I said, 70% of the time they say, oh, send me an email or reach out to this person via email. They'll send you an app. So in my opinion, it's a lot more effective just to email up front, get the application, get a response from the supplier. And then I try to get them on the phone in a couple of situations. So if I don't hear back from them at all, so they're radio silence to my emails, then I'll try to call them up and get a response that way. 2, if they flat out deny me, maybe they say, oh, sorry, we're not taking any more Amazon sellers, or for whatever reason they deny me, then I'm definitely going to try to get them on the phone. Because typically when you get a denial over email, it's going to come from like a specific person, usually somebody in sales. So they're going to have their name and usually their phone number in their email signature. And so you get the hard no, and then you call them up. And typically, if you can get them on the phone, the person that actually denied you, in my experience, 20 to 30% of the time, if you can get that person on the phone, you can change their mind. And so that's not like a huge hit rate, but if you're calling, if you get 10 denials and you change 2 of those 10 no's to a yes, that's 2 accounts that one are probably going to be very profitable for you because nobody else took the time to try to change that no to a yes. And therefore, that's going to be a big barrier to entry for others and most likely a profitable relationship for you.
For sure. Yeah. It's always just doing the work everybody else doesn't want to do. Like in almost
Yep.
any Amazon model, if you do the stuff that everybody else is like, oh, that sucks. Like that's how you're gonna win.
In any business period, like,
Yeah.
and especially, this is a sales role, right? And it's the salespeople that are willing to make the tough calls or are willing to, make the few extra calls. Those are the ones that end up being successful long term. And it's absolutely no different in this business.
Yeah, for sure. So something you kind of touched on there is, turning that no into a yes, calling up a buyer. We don't sell to Amazon sellers. That's a super common objection. What are some things you're saying on the phone to turn that no into a yes?
Yeah. So, I mean, really, I just try to ask questions, especially when I've already been denied. And typically, once you can get them on the phone, when you explain who you are, they're trying to get you off the phone, right? They're like, oh, I already told this guy no. Like, what does he want? So, I try to ask questions that will educate them on what it is that they're lacking. So, if they say, hey, we don't want any more Amazon sellers, when I get them on the phone, I say, okay, I don't blame you. Like, most Amazon sellers suck. But let me ask you, why is that? Why is it that you don't want more Amazon sellers? And typically, when you can get them to have that conversation with you, they will open up, the floodgates will open up, right? They'll say, oh, well, we've had so many issues in the past with all of these sellers breaking MAP, for example. And so for people that don't know, MAP, M-A-P, is a policy that a lot of brands have. It stands for minimum advertised price. And it essentially states that as a reseller of their brand, you're not allowed to price under a certain price point. And the reason for that is if, like, a lot of these brands have brick and mortar customers that sell their products in their stores, right? So if somebody goes into a brick and mortar to buy a product and they just look at their phone and it's $20 cheaper on Amazon, it kills the brick and mortar business. Brick and mortar gets pissed at the brand turn around and get pissed at the Amazon seller. So I kind of got off on a tangent there, but bottom line is you just want to figure out why it is that they don't want Amazon sellers and then educate them on how you can be a little different. So if they're having issues with MAP, figure out and I guess explain how you can help them address that issue. If they have really poor quality listings, you can ask them why it is that their current sellers have not brought some of those issues to their attention. Other more tactical things, I mean, there's a lot of brands where if you type the brand name into Amazon and you search, their competitors are advertising on those branded keywords. So for example, if I type Adidas into the Amazon search bar and the first 4 listings are promoted listings and they're Nike products, then if I'm Adidas, I want to know that Nike is advertising on my keywords, because if the first 4 listings that pop up are my competitors, why are my Amazon sellers not advertising on those keywords, right? We're losing so much sales as a result. So it's just finding out some pain points and then explaining them and educating them in a way that positions you as the person to solve those pain points.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's tremendous value there. I had never thought about the making sure they're not getting targeted by other people. That's awesome.
Yeah, I guess advertising on branded keywords is massive low-hanging fruit. And really, like, I'd say 70% of brands probably have that issue. Unless a brand has their Amazon presence dialed in, that's one of the most common issues I see. And like, if the brand gets it, they're going to say, oh, that's a problem. We need to get this guy on board to fix it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to be using that one.
Yeah,
that's a good angle. Yeah. So you also are saying like, 20-30% of the time you can turn it into a yes, which obviously those couple accounts are going to be awesome. How do you know when to take a no as a no?
Yeah, good question. So really, I keep pushing. If I see potential long term, I will definitely keep pushing, because if a brand just gives me a hard no, and if it's for a generic generic, oh, no Amazon sellers reason, but I see the brand on Amazon and I see potential for improvement. Maybe their listings suck, or maybe they have other Amazon sellers and I see a way to get my foot in the door, then I will continue to follow up long term, months, years, if that's what it takes. But if it's kind of just a smaller brand or a smaller supplier, and maybe I just, I'm not super excited about it, maybe they're just kind of smaller time, I might follow up a couple of times and then leave it be, or I might not follow up at all. So it depends on the potential I see in the relationship.
Yeah, that's awesome. How often are you following up with those guys?
So it depends on the initial conversation and the reason for denial. So there's some cases where, like, if I just don't get a response at all, I'm following up every 3 to 4 business days. And then if I get a hard no, it depends on my conversation and my rapport with the person I spoke with. If we had a good conversation, we built a good rapport, but the timing's just not right, well, then I might check in with that specific person once a month, once every few weeks. But if it's like hey, we have a company policy, like we have our resellers locked in for the year, which a lot of big brands, that's how they operate. They have like their resellers on yearly contracts. We're not going to have an opening until literally next year. In that case, I might check in once a quarter. And that's actually the exact scenario that our number one brand direct account, I had to follow up with them for 3.5 years to get it. And they have like an authorized reseller program where I think they only have like 12 or 15 resellers that they authorize, and they have them on yearly contracts. So it's like once they're in for the year, no spots are opening up even possibly until literally a year later. So in that case, I followed up with the same person who was the wholesale manager once a quarter until I think the end of last year is when they had one reseller. I think it went out of business or something. So she's like, hey, we had a spot open up, 3.5 years after initial contact. And that's kind of how we were able to get in.
That's awesome. Yeah, just being persistent, staying consistent with it. That's
yeah,
awesome.
just like ruthlessly persistent.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that's awesome on kind of the outreach stuff. I know that's a lot of people's, initial hump with getting into wholesale and all that kind of stuff. So moving along through the process, you've opened a couple accounts with those distributors. You get the price sheet. How do you know whether or not you have a good distributor on your hands?
Yeah, so when it comes to distributors, there's 3 primary criteria that we look for. So the first one is we look for suppliers that are primarily B2B. And now that's not to say that they can't have like a retail arm or a B2C arm. It's just in my multiple years of experience, the best suppliers are strictly business to business. They want to sell in bulk and they want to sell to big buyers. So that's the first criteria, is primarily B2B. Second criteria is they've got to carry brand name products that are already selling well on Amazon. So when I'm going to a distributor's website, most distributors are going to have at least a sample of the products or usually the brands that they carry on their website. And so I'm just going to take a quick look. And if it's like a grocery distributor, usually with one glance, you can see if they're big brands, right? If I see like General Mills, Hershey's, Pepsi, like those brands on the distributor's website, well, I know, okay, I recognize these brands. Assuming I can get the right price, then I can sell these products, right? So that's what we're trying to confirm, is that the products that they carry are actually selling on Amazon. And then the third criteria, and this is one that we got hung up on for honestly like a year, if not 2 years, is they don't have to primarily cater to retailers, but retailers have to be at least one of the verticals that they serve. And now this is a little more advanced of a tactic, because there's plenty of suppliers like distributors that I've come across over the years where they fit the first criteria, they're strictly B2B. They fit the second criteria, they carry brand name products, big brands that we love to sell, but they don't meet the third criteria because, and I made this example recently where, like, for example, this supplier we reached out to, they primarily catered to hospitals, schools, and the government, but they carried General Mills, Hershey's, like these big grocery brands. But when we reached out, I'm trying to explain what it is that we do and the fact that we're a retail business. And even though we could potentially work with them, we could possibly work it out, we don't necessarily fit into like the box of the type of customer that they're used to working with, if that makes sense. So you want to make sure that they're used to dealing with retailers, because that's what we are. And as long as you fit the mold of the type of customer they usually sell to, then the conversation is going to be much easier.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, going through kind of identifying that supplier, you get that price sheet, or you're starting looking through the website. Like, what's your research method right now?
So right now we actually are doing 100% manual, like in the trenches by hand research. So we've used, there's plenty of UPC scanning tools out there. We've used them all. And some of them are great when the UPCs are accurate, but they're just not always going to be accurate. So these UPC scanning tools, they don't pick up bundles. They don't pick up multi-packs. And unless the UPC is a perfect match with the Amazon listing, which by the way, is only the case maybe 50% of the time, then it's going to skip over some potentially very profitable and very high demand listings. So our research method right now, and this is actually fully conducted, we have 2 full full-time team members that 8 hours a day are focused on sourcing. They're either in price list or they're in the supplier's website, doing a lot of reverse sourcing, looking at the brands the supplier carries, and then comparing their pricing to those same products on Amazon. And then we're either doing that, like I said, manually by hand, or we're using a tool like Smart Scout, which Smart Scout is hands down the best like reverse sourcing and product research tool that we've used, at least for our specific model.
Sweet. Yeah. Yeah. You can load up all the best listings in one specific brand, just kind of match it to that main catalog and enjoy and keep a product finder does something similar as well. You can kind of find some gems that way. Yeah. So you kind of mentioned the team you're working with there. Let's just go ahead and get into that a little bit. Can you walk me through kind of your team structure? You said you got 2 product sourcers. Where else do you have some help on the business?
Yeah. So when I look at our business and our team, so I kind of see it as a more of like an organization chart, right? So at the top is me, right? I'm kind of running the show. My main responsibilities and my main value that I can bring to the company is closing new accounts, approving purchase orders, and doing stuff like this, right? Like building my personal brand to get more suppliers and more leads into our pipeline. So at the highest level, that's where I see my value, right? And then under me, I have my head of operations. She's been with me for about 3.5 years. She's virtual. She's located in the Philippines. And she is essentially managing the rest of the team, right? And her high level responsibilities include putting together purchase orders. So she's taking the leads that the sourcing team members are bringing in, and she's compiling purchase orders based on the leads that they're finding. She conducts a once a week sourcing training with the whole team where they get on Zoom together and they just practice sourcing. And I have nothing to do with that call because they do it in their language, right? They all speak Tagalog, which is the language of the Philippines. And so because of that, the training is much more effective. And like I said, they do it an hour a week, and they've been doing that for over 2 years now. And so, like I said, her role is tee up purchase orders for me, manage the rest of the team, and essentially keep everybody doing what they need to be doing. Under her, we have our admin. And so he's responsible for everything Seller Central related, paying invoices, managing the repricer, updating cost of goods with our bookkeeper, and then in seller board, among a range of other just administrative type tasks. And really his role is meant to keep my operations head freed up as much as possible. So anything that comes in, emails, these little things here and there that pop up, as they do, he's handling that so that she can focus on the higher level. And then, and then under them too, like I said, we've got 2 folks that are doing product sourcing 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. And their entire role is spent, like I said, either deep in supplier catalogs, either in their website or in price lists. And their 100% responsibility is just to find more products for us to buy. And they do a really good job of it.
Awesome. Yeah. When would you say, like, even, on your own wholesale journey, like when would you say someone should think about hiring that first virtual assistant, and what role would they play?
Yeah. So I think a lot of it depends on the time that you have available as well as your skill set. And so big mistake I see people making is, one, hiring a virtual assistant far too early, like well before they even have an understanding of the business themselves. And then 2, hiring a virtual assistant for the wrong tasks. So when you're starting out and really your first few years in the business, your highest leverage task as the business owner is going to be spending money and buying products, right? And doing the sourcing and doing the analysis. And a lot of people, the first hire they make is someone to do that job, which I think is the opposite approach. So I think if someone's going to make their first hire and it's going to be a virtual employee, they need to get that low level, like $5 an hour work off their plate so that they can focus on the sourcing. And that low level $5 an hour work is things like managing Seller Central, reaching out to new suppliers, via email, following up, scheduling calls with like discovery calls with suppliers, filtering email, doing so much of this tedious stuff that just doesn't move the needle that can add up to 1, 2, 4 hours a day sometimes.
Cool. Yeah. A lot of people would say to jump in with a sourcing virtual assistant. So it's cool to see that.
I think the opposite. I think, like I said, that should be the last thing that you outsource, even if, and I mean, I can't tell you how many DMs I get from people that'll say, hey, I'm brand new to the business and this VA reached out to me and they're promising, all these leads and they have these relationships and they can open these accounts. What should I do? And I mean, I think my answer, but that's just the wrong way to approach it.
Yeah, I agree. That was even something that I started thinking about recently, is maybe it makes way more sense to hire admin than then sourcing. And that was something that I hired sourcing first. And maybe in retrospect, I should have done it the other way around.
But the difference is, like, you have sourcing experience, so like you know how to find profitable products. So you could very easily and very well teach a virtual employee how to source. But my advice is more so geared towards people that are new to the business. Maybe it was marketed to them as somewhat passive, and their thought process is, oh, well, why would I learn how to source when I could just hire someone in the Philippines to do it? But the issue is that if you don't know how to source yourself, you have no idea if they'll leads they're giving you are good. You don't know how to give them feedback. You don't know how to continue to coach them and improve their skills. So you've got to build that foundation yourself first. And then once you have the foundation in place, that's when you leverage virtual talent to scale.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of a dangerous proposition to trust all of your money with some virtual assistant who says they're better than you and just kind of see what happens.
Right. Well, especially when they're going to be working for 2 to 7
Yeah.
other people at the same time.
Yeah, something you were also kind of touching on there is, the ability to be remote and run the business from anywhere. I know another thing that people in wholesale, big misconceptions, you always have to have the warehouse. How are you able to have that remote business with the wholesale business model?
Yeah, definitely. And so I think that that's been the most, at least in my opinion, like the most, not to toot my own horn, but like the most impressive part of our business is the fact that we are 100% remote. I haven't touched or seen a product in probably 2.5 years. And so the reason that we're able to do that is we just have really good prep centers that we work with. And right now we work with 2 on the East Coast, and they've been fantastic. And so it's taken multiple years to develop those relationships and to get them to where they understand our business, they understand our model, we're on the same page. We have systems in place for when issues come up, we can address them quickly and keep moving on business as usual. So it really just takes finding that really good prep center to partner with that understands your business, communicating with them, over communicating with them, and just making sure that the products that you're sourcing, that the margins are able to absorb the slightly higher variable costs that a prep center entails.
For sure. Yeah. We've been getting into wholesale, all that kind of stuff, trying to just look for those higher ASP and all that good stuff to pick with the prep center model. I just loved it too much, being able to just kind of be wherever, not touch products. Like it's kind of addicting. It's like a video game.
I was literally about to say, and people make that point on Twitter all the time. Like I look at it certainly as a video game at this point, because it's like the more you buy, the more your numbers are going to go up. And when you're buying, it's just going to the prep center. So all we have to focus on is the sourcing component, because the logistics is fully handled, fully outsourced. And so at that point, the game becomes how good can we get at sourcing and how much good inventory can we buy? Because that's the lead measure that's going to lead to the, to the orange bars that everybody likes to see.
For sure. Yep. Yeah. So leaving the strategy portion of things, what kind of motivates you to keep pushing? What's your drive for just business in general?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I enjoy it. Like, it's just fun. At this point, every day I wake up, like a lot of times I kind of wake up before my alarm and I'm like ready to go, right? Like super motivated and super ready just to continue working on this business. And I mean, at this point, again, not to kind of toot my own horn, but I'm good at it because I've been doing it I've been selling on Amazon for 6 years and wholesale for 4.5 now. So it's fun. And it's almost like a competition with myself to continue increasing our numbers, to get better at managing, to get better at the business in general. And then a lot of the skills all the skills I've learned from this business have translated to other endeavors, whether that be investing or whether that just be other business ventures. So it comes down to just competing with yourself and just continuing to sharpen your skills. At least that's kind of what drives me.
For sure. Yeah. It's just continual improvement. That's awesome, man. Yep. Yeah. So we actually have kind of a special offer for you guys watching this video. Corey's thrown together a bit of a challenge, all that, 4.5 years of wholesale knowledge. We're going to be doing an exclusive coupon for you guys watching this channel as well. Corey, can you let them know what they're going to see inside the wholesale challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, just to give people a background on what it is that we're doing. So we're going to be bringing you, it's called the Wholesale Challenge. And what the Wholesale Challenge is going to be is it's going to be a 7-day live training directly with me on how to start, scale, and manage a 100% remote 7-figure Amazon wholesale business. So every night we're going to be live with me for multiple hours at a time, running through the basics of the business, not just the basic, but some of the advanced parts of the business as well, where you're going to learn, like I said, live from me, how to run the business, and you're going to be able to ask questions from me as well.
That's awesome. So week-long program, videos, community, anything like that. What else comes along with it?
Yeah, so it's going to be a live training. So it's going to be live every night. Whoever signs up will get the recording. So the information you'll have forever. There will be a Facebook community that's going to go along with it. So you'll be able to ask questions from me all day, every day, and also after the challenge as well. And it's going to be a community of other like-minded wholesale sellers. So it's going to be fantastic for networking and also getting your questions answered by other sellers. And then really the live training is kind of the tip of the iceberg. We have so many bonuses and things that are going to come with it. And I could go into those if you like, but yeah, I mean, the value is going to be absolutely insane. And I think that this is going to be a game changer for people that are either trying to get into wholesale to begin with, or 2, they're in the wholesale game already and they're looking to put their business on steroids. I mean, that's kind of the way that I see it.
Awesome. Yeah. And if you guys follow Corey on Twitter, I'm sure you see how much value he's giving out for free. I really appreciate all the resources he's shared with the community. So some of those bonuses that he's also going to be adding are kind of a guide to managing your virtual assistant, training up your virtual assistants, how to dominate at trade shows, and then just a bunch of stuff on the back end, show you how to, refine your system, some spreadsheets, all that good stuff. But if you guys go through my link, click down below, you're going to get an exclusive $100 off. You're not going to find that too many other places. So if you guys want to go learn more about wholesale, go ahead and check it out. Corey's going to teach you a ton in that week.
Yep. And so the challenge is going to be running from July 10th to July 17th. So we would love to have you come out and join us. Like I said, it's going to be an insane value. And I think that the learning and the networking opportunities that are going to come from it are going to be unmatched. So really looking forward to it and looking forward to, having as many people come out as are looking to learn.
Awesome. Yep. Really appreciate you hopping on the channel, Corey. If they want to go reach out to you, ask you some questions, maybe drop a follow, drop all these gems on the video today, where can they find you?
Yeah, so best places to find me. So I'm definitely the most active on Twitter. So on Twitter, I'm at Ganem Corey. Here on YouTube as well. So on YouTube, I'm at Corey Ganem. And then about 3 weeks ago, I actually released my podcast. And so the name of the podcast is the Amazon Wholesale Podcast. And you're actually going to be able to catch Warner on the podcast here in a couple of weeks. And on that podcast, I just interview other successful wholesale sellers. So anybody looking to get into Amazon wholesale, I'm your guy. Give me a follow. I put out a lot of good information.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll get those links dropped down below. Really appreciate you guys watching this video. If you guys did get value out of it, please feel free to hit that subscribe button, add that value back to my business. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, anything like that. Always happy to answer those down below for you as well. Really appreciate you guys watching this video, and I will see you next time.